We're streaming. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Forgiving the Girl Inside. It's all a matter of the heart. I have the most beautiful guest today. We have Sydney Nanberg, right?
Yes.
As you all know, I'm your host, Lisa Drennan. And if you know me, you know I'm challenged by saying things. I was like Moses. He needed a speaker for him, so his brother Aaron spoke for him. But here I am doing these podcast interviews because I love sharing and hearing stories from beautiful women, beautiful entrepreneurs such as Sydney. So welcome, Sydney. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm very excited to hear your healing journey story.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here. I'm always inspired by you, and I'm so excited for this, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And I'm excited to hear your story. So tell us, what is the, we're going to go right into it, just dive right into it. What was the deepest thing? I know your story about being brave and moving down to Florida at a young age, college age, 18, 19 years old, which is totally brave for me. But what was the Sydney like before that? You know, what was the darkest moments that were going on?
Yeah. So growing up, I was severely bullied in school from, I don't even know, as long as I can remember, all the way through high school. I was constantly left out. I was constantly called fat, ugly, told I was stupid. I would never be anything. The list can go on and on. And so I really struggled growing up, and I was extremely shy. I still am very quiet, very introverted, like I was telling you before. And at the end of the day, I would just kind of come home and, you know, like any other kid that's bullied, I really struggled with anxiety and depression. And, but for some reason, like I would come home and I would write, and I had this like I would write, like that was my life. Like I would go to school, I was bullied, I would come home, I would probably cry my eyes out half the time, and I would write because I was like, no, like this is not going to be my future. I don't know where that came from, that mentality of no, this isn't going to be it. But that's kind of what it was like. So when I went off to school, to college in Arizona, so I'm from Chicago and I went to school in Arizona, I had like a fresh start, and I got to be, you know, who I was, and I met people who accepted me for how I was. But once I got to school, I almost had this like realization that, you know, okay, despite my mentality that my life isn't going to be this way that I always had growing up, all of a sudden it brought out like this like frustration and more anxiety and more depression in me. And I thought, this isn't my path either. And so I went through all these ups and downs of just unhappiness and trying to figure out who I am, and really struggling with anxiety and depression and not believing in myself. And one day there's a lot of things that went into it, but I decided the typical question, if I could do anything in the world right now, what would I do? And it was to move to Miami. My family does live in Florida, my grandparents. So it was easy for me to kind of move there. It wasn't easy, but like I had connections here. My family, my grandparents, who I'm very, very close with, some passed away. And I dropped out of school. I got a job. I saved up money and I moved. And I was terrified, like I was telling you. And I thought, how much worse it wasn't like, you know, there's horrible things that happen in this world, but personally, I was struggling so bad with anxiety and depression. I thought, what am I going to do? Continue just kind of living my life in a way that doesn't feel right for me? Or am I going to try something totally different? Because life is so short. You know, we never realize how short life really is. And yes, I might be 27 years old right now, but life is short. And in the last couple of years, I've lost a lot of people close to me and in my family. And friends, actually, due to COVID and other things. And, you know, it's something that I always just had in the back of my mind. I just think, you know, life is short. So I hit that point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to feel this way. This isn't my path. You know, after all these years of feeling miserable and, you know, trying to feel better and writing about my future and feeling like this isn't it, like now it's time to do something about it. And so that's kind of, to sum it up, how it was before I made the move. Once I made the move is when like I realized the real difficulties would begin, because then it's like, okay, this is a totally different world. This is a totally new thing. But before that, it was just a lot of severe anxiety, panic attacks, just feeling miserable, yet somehow hopeful, which was very like an odd thing, somehow hopeful. And I just wanted to like break free from that and do something different with my life where I could help people and, you know, be who I am and be surrounded by people that accept me for me and start fresh, I guess. I know there's so much that goes into this, but that's kind of what my life was like before. I was very young, you know, it was all in high school, middle school, elementary school. So it was like every other kid, you know, that go to school. And for me, my situation was bullying and yeah. And so that's what it was like before. It was not fun.
Bullying is very serious. I know, and you know, I know you're going to talk about your podcast, but in my hometown, I live in upstate New York, in Rochester, New York, and I live in a town called Grace. And a few years back, there was kids that were bullying the bus monitor, and it was huge. It was like advertised everywhere. And you know, the person had actually gone to the family had gone to my church. And it was devastating. And the kid, you know, he was a kid and he was just following along the crowd. Like there was no thought process. And I don't really think he had an intentional meanness in his body, but I know I was bullied a little bit when I was a kid, and I actually bullied people. And I remember just being so angry. And it's just like, because you don't process those feelings. And, you know, when you're that person that receives that information, you know, like looking back, I'm like, how could I have been so mean to that person? I remember this one time I was in 7th grade and we used to pick on this kid because he was skinny, tiny little thing, really awkward looking. And we used to tease him, pick on him to no end. And I was wearing a yellow shirt. He accidentally spilled black ink. We were in art class on my yellow shirt. And I was super poor growing up. So that yellow shirt, like I only had 4 or 5 shirts, like in that shirt was ruined. So now my wardrobe just like got cut in half. And I was so angry that I did it to him the next day. And I remember this girl came up to me the next day as I was walking my bus, and she's like, why did you bully him and da-da-da? And I'm like, because he spilled black paint over basically only over the clothes I own that were hardly any. She's like, well, do you know what his family's like? And da-da-da-da. And I'm like, whatever. You know, and as I grew older, I think back and I'm like, wow, kids don't know that. They're so insensitive. So I really made it a point with my kids when they were little to respect people, because I know how hurtful bullying can be. And I've heard stories with the suicide rate raising because of bullying, because, you know, when so many of us, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started this show, is because we can be forgiving towards other, but it's all a matter of the heart, because we believe what we receive, and receiving this information from others, a lot of people will put their value in other people. And then before you know it, you've established who you are. So tell us you know, you said you were doing a lot of writing, which is fantastic, because the power of words, scientifically proven, when you write something out, you heal from it. So what made you, like, did you ever stand up to these boys and say, hey, that's enough?
No, I never ever did, because I was too shy, and I always felt like I was part of a group of like mean girls basically. And sometimes they would like take turns and like pick on one person at a time, and then you'd be like out of the group. And like, I didn't have it in me at the time. I had like these girls, it was mainly like a group of girls, and they would write me hate letters. I didn't, you know, get to go on my trip to Washington, D.C. like everybody else, because they told me there's no room for me. I need to sleep in the bathroom on the floor, on like next to the bathtub. Like, it was just like very hurtful. Like a lot, there's so many things that happened. I've been pushed before, whatever. And I just didn't have it in me to stand up to them. Looking back now, you know, I understand hurt people. And I can see that today, and have actually had conversations with some of the people who did bully me, which is interesting growing up, to hear their story and to hear like what they were going through as adults. But I didn't even know it happened. It was almost like it seemed normal. Like, this is what it is. Like, this is my life. Like, I'm that misfit. I'm that person that's just not cool. I'm just that person. So I just kind of
you're very cool.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely very cool.
Thank you. I accepted that about myself and all of these other things that I was being told from a very young age. And so I was just like, no, this is like probably what I deserve. So I never stood up for myself until now.
Well, I'm glad you stood up for yourself.
Thank
So what was the turning point that made you want to just stand up for yourself and say, no, this is not who I am, and this is what I'm gonna do? What was that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually very interesting, like what actually happened. So when I was 18, I was in college. This is right before I asked myself if I could do anything, what would it be? It was around Christmas time, and I went to Israel on a trip called Birthright. So my family, I'm Jewish, and I did not want to go because we're not really religious, but I was also like very scared because I was like, oh my God, this is so far away. Not like Arizona. I mean, Arizona's far away from Chicago, but like I was like, I had never been that far away before, and my cousins are texting me. They're like, Sydney, you're gonna be fine. Like my little cousins, they're like, you're gonna be fine, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And I ended up going. I was there for like 3 weeks. I went on Birthright, and then I stayed after for a bit of time. And it changed my entire life because that was the first time I really felt like I was accepted in a way. Like the group of people that I was with kind of made the trip for me, and understanding like, and we had to do all these like team building and like bonding activities. Like, I don't know. It just like, I don't know. We had to do things like that. And there was something about it that I realized I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of doing what I want. And I don't know where that, it actually wasn't a religious thing that made me think that. I just kind of, I guess I'd never been out of the country. I'd never traveled really. I'd never really seen anything different than what I had already seen besides going away to college or like traveling down to Florida on vacation. And I went there, and it just shifted my entire perspective on life. And it taught me like love. Like everybody was so close, and so like everybody became such close friends. I'd never been included like that before. When I went away to school, it was a fresh start, and I made friends that accepted me. And but going here, you're all together in the same situation. You know, you're in the same place. You're all going through the same things, and I learned so much. And I came back like I've never been the same since that trip. It just changed the way that I view myself and what I'm capable of doing. And I remember that there was one night where I get very severe migraines, and I had a very severe migraine, and we were supposed to go to this concert or something. I don't remember because I didn't go. I told the leader of the trip, I said, I can't go. I have a migraine. And they were like, no, you need to go anyways. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like I have a migraine, like I can't do it. And on the trip, there was all of us Americans. And then we had Israeli soldiers that were our age that were also on the trip with us. And my roommate that night, because we always switched roommates, happened to be another Israeli girl my age. And I told her what was going on, and she was like, no, you stand up for yourself, and this is what you do, and you don't take no for an answer. If you're sick, then you're sick. You take control of the situation, and we're going to get through this together. Like whatever she said, it was like empowering. And I was like, why don't I ever think like that? Like she was so I just remember this girl was just like so nice, so kind. Like the entire trip, she was just so happy. Like, and I was like, did I miss something in life? Like what's wrong with my mindset? Like, why aren't I need to like stand up for myself more. And then I came back from Israel, and I mean, there's so many things that happened, but I came back, and that's when I asked myself, like, if I could do anything, what would it be? Because this is not right for me. And it's time for me to make a change. And that was my breaking point where I was like, I don't have to put up with this. I have the power to say no. I have the power to stand up for myself. I have the power to do something about my situation. If I'm not happy, the only person that can change it is me. And whether I like it or not, that's what it is. And it's going to be hard no matter what I do. It's you have to choose your tough. It's either really hard to stay in a situation that you really aren't happy with, and it's really hard to make a change. So what is it going to be, Sydney? That's literally what I said. And
choose your
that
herd.
was that point. Yeah, that's kind of like what it was. There were a few other things, but that was a big part of it. And I have never been the same since. changed me for the better.
I love that. I love that. Choose your hard. And,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of times people like the familiar and they're like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just too afraid. So I love the bravery that you showed. So how did you tell us about your podcast? I was totally intrigued. I was shocked that you have one. Nobody knows. So tell us, how'd you get this? What's your podcast name and how'd you get started?
Yeah. So my podcast is called She Did It. And I started it because I want to help prevent suicides and bullying in a way that's a little bit different. So it's all about mindset and helping you to live a fulfilling life. I know with bullying, telling people stop bullying, it doesn't do, when you're a kid, telling kids that it doesn't do much, and it starts at home, I believe. Although
absolutely.
I don't know everybody's situation, but for the most part, I believe a lot of it can probably start at home. And so I thought, okay, well, what's a way that I could get through to people? What's a way that I could do this differently? And my way was trying to help people to live a more fulfilling life by talking about anxiety, by talking about things that make us uncomfortable, by talking about experiences, by having other people share their experiences, tell their stories, speak their truth, and give tools and resources. And when you feel good, you do good. And I felt that if I could get this to the right people, then they're going to pass down what they learned to their kids and whatever. And it's going to help people to feel better on the inside. And so it's all about mindset. And that's why I started the podcast, and it took off, and it's done well. We're going to be coming back with a new season, but that's why I did it. My mission is to prevent suicides, to help people to feel happier, to show them that they're not alone, and that there are so many ways of going about coping with, I'm not a therapist or I'm not a doctor, but, I just share my things that I've learned, my experiences. I still battle anxiety every single day. But, I've learned a lot along the way. And I want to share that with others. And I want other people to share their experiences too, so that we can really make this a better world, I guess. And with the internet, there's so much more negativity and cyberbullying. There's a lot of good that comes from the internet. There's also another side of it. And I would like to at least be someone online that brings good, just like you do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm so glad that you do that. And I have a few friends that would love to support you in that respect. So we'll get the link in the description and we'll share that, because it is so important. And I know, especially during the past 18 months, it's been, very prevalent. And I know a lot of friends support that cause. I know there's somebody in one of my groups who actually makes bracelets that all the proceeds go towards that cause. So it's a beautiful cause. And thank you for doing that. And it is so important, because people don't understand how bullying can really, especially our young people, when their minds are forming, their identities, their self-value, their self-worth, and they just need to know that they're loved. And it does start at home. And sometimes it's unaware because the parents, it's kind of like a generational curse. And, sometimes you have those authoritative parents. It's my way or the highway.
Yes.
I interviewed a girl that had something very, parents were just like, nope, this is your way, and it's my way. If you don't like it, there's the door. 18 years old, kicked out. What do you mean? You pay for your own way, because I'm not going to follow your to-do list.
Yeah.
Like, I'm my own person. And I have family members that are totally authoritative like that. And I'm like, nope.
Like that.
It's like, nope, here's my boundaries. Don't cross them. I don't agree with you. See ya. Yeah. So if you could give our audience, that somebody who's being bullied or struggling with anxiety or depression, what would be one word of advice that you would give to them? Or one piece of advice? I won't limit it to one word.
Well,
piece of advice.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, if anyone is feeling super alone, or like they have no one, or they, are considering even harming themselves, obviously, please call. There's the suicide hotline. Like, make sure you talk to somebody. I would say that's the first thing. But if you're battling anxiety and, you're being bullied, know that there's hope. There's always solutions. That's one thing I always learned growing up. So I guess my piece of advice would be, find different solutions. That my parents, like, that was their thing. They were like, you're never gonna, this situation is temporary. What do you want to do from here? You know, no matter what situation you're in. I remember I was I was crying my eyes out. I was in middle school. My parents came into the room. We talked about whatever happened at school that day. And my dad said, it might not seem like it now, but later on in life, there are always going to be other options. You're going to be able to choose and create the life that you want. And this situation right now is temporary. It might seem like it's going to last forever, but it's not. So figure out, you know, what it is you want to do. I guess this is for if you're being bullied. What do you want to do? You know, and there's so many pieces of advice I could give. So like now I'm like, okay, wait, which do I start with? But I would say recognize that there are different solutions. If you are in serious danger, you know, obviously ask for help. And if you're battling anxiety, mindfulness. I have found that being extremely self-aware, which I do through journaling, through taking time for myself. I'm a very impatient person. I have zero patience. I'm really, really working on it. Patience. This is the first year I ever did like a word of the year, and I chose patience. It hasn't gotten any better ever since, but there are things that have helped me over the years to get better at patience. Journaling is one of them. Meditation. Headspace is a great app, but also Netflix now has Headspace on there, which is so cool. It's really important to slow down. And when I become mindful of the situation, I can understand why it might be happening. And then, you know, again, back to solutions, create other solutions. And so, but I sit with it first. I accept it. I know that it'll pass, that it's temporary. You know, same thing with if you're being bullied in school, by, you know, taking that step back and thinking about what is it that I want, remembering that this is temporary, obviously standing up to yourself. But if you're in harm, you know, reach out to somebody. It's a really tough situation, and it's hard to give advice to when I'm not a doctor or a therapist or anything like that. But from my own personal experience, I think forward. I think about, it's important to sit with your feelings, acknowledge them, become self-aware, and then find solutions afterwards. So I guess more of the story, kind of trying to bring all of my top tips together. That is what I would do. It's not easy, but even if you're not in danger and you feel like you need help, reaching out for help, finding podcasts, finding YouTube videos, people that inspire you, removing the people that totally bring you down, like even on social media, even on, you know, kids can be bullied, but so can adults. Like, you know, even removing people on your news feed or on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is that they don't make you feel good. Like little things like that you'll learn when you become mindful. And, I hope that those are good tips, but those are a few things that really helped me and help me to this day.
Yeah, captivating your thoughts is so important in changing the results when you can do that. So that's an excellent piece of advice. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your tips. I really appreciate it. And thank you, audience, for listening. In the description, you're going to find ways to connect with Sydney and reach out to her, find her podcast, however you want to connect with her to learn more about how to process anxiety, bullying, and all those things. So thanks, and have an amazing night. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa.